All right, out in the woods today. We've had unseasonably warm weather. Now today it's 70. Beautiful bluebird day. This is a tract I've hunted a lot the last 3 years and had no struck out the last 2. First year bow hunting here, I killed 2 deer. Next 2, just been awful. But I'm starting in what I think is maybe an overlooked area. This is a little ditch. I guess not really a ditch, a drainage, about 15 yards wide, and on either side there's kind of a slope. This stuff is all super thick, and over here it's thick, but it opens up into a pine savanna kind of thing. Not as interested over there. I'm thinking there might be some overlooked spots, and these two, this area sits just before we really hit the bottoms, the swampy Flatwoods, cypress, whatever. So it's a little more piney, also really thick, as you can see. I mean, just lots of trashy garbage. So, all right, I cut across from that ditch over yonder, came up about 150 yards. This seems like this would be a decent little browse patch, or maybe even a bedding area. It gets so much sunlight. Pretty sure I just heard a deer. Maybe bumped. There's another ditch just over yonder. It cuts down into the bottom. And so this basically creates like a little, I wouldn't call it a knob, but it's about 200, 300 yards across. But creates a little hill before you get to the bottom. And I did have an close encounter just over the, you can see this kind of thick veil that cuts down to that ditch over there. And I was on the other side of it, probably in a tree you could almost see. Had a deer come out, almost came out into the opening and then hooked down into that ditch, out into the bottom. So I'm trying to figure out kind of how they would use this spot. It's just, I'm never really sure how to put the pieces together. But this seems like this would probably be growing some browse for most of the season because of how much light it gets. So, you know, not a bad little area to keep tromping around. Here's a good visual. I don't know if you can see it where my finger's pointing. It's where you can kind of see that that ditch starts to cut. It starts up about here, just cuts down. So this is all a little knob. I want to figure out where these deer might be bedding. There's like kind of a dark, shady spot over there. Maybe that's where they're at. I'm just gonna keep tromping around here. This is an easy to access area. It's not far from the car. There is a pond up here about 150 yards away. There's a fairly big pond. And one of the morning sits I had on a Sunday morning, I was down in here and these dudes came and started blasting some ducks. It was kind of a drag, but that's more of a concern later in the season. So you can see here's your cut leading out into the bottom. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that deer came from this direction and just hooked into that. So this was the last set of the year. I climbed this tree. I don't know what this is, type of pine. I got up just high enough to get over this stuff. So you could see I would be able to shoot kind of around over there and then over here as well. And there's a little rub somewhere over here. It also had, at the late season, had some browse growing. Wish I remember the name. I'll have to look in my notes. You can see here it also drops off right there. So in the ditch is just right over this little crest. You can almost see it. I didn't have a lot of confidence, but you know, it wasn't a bad little spot. You can see if something maybe tickled this tree a little bit. Trying to see if I could find that rub I saw again. Can't seem to put my eye on it. There's one more view of that kind of knob. You can see, here's the ditch. next hill, which we're not interested in, and then onto the big flats. This is beautiful right now. Just beautiful. Usually there's some, once we get out here, there'll be some sloughs and stuff we can kind of follow and trace the edge of. So let's get walking. It's a beautiful day. Just so you can see, this is kind of what we're talking about with the sloughs cutting to the bottoms. When the water's really high, this will all be underwater. But water's about what it, a little higher than much of the season until about December. 2 deer I saw were on this side of the bank. I was walking out the opposite. They had obviously gotten up and were coming this way. It must have been bedded down somewhere over here, but I'm not too concerned with that. I'm kind of just still trying to see if I see any setups. I usually do not hunt these open expanses. Even in the early season, this is all, in my view, just a little too open. If someone's enjoying poaching, there's no firearm season open, not even for small game. They're doing some target practice, I guess. Maybe it's on private. Trying to ignore some of the bigger feed trees as well, just because I have had no luck on feed trees ever. Now here's something interesting. This is almost, that's almost up to my hip. If something did tickle that, that'd be a pretty big deer. But I don't think you'd kill him out here, that's for sure, not in this area. This is a spot I've had marked as kind of a creek crossing, because when this is dry, I've seen them kind of use this, because there's cover on this side and a decent amount of cover on this side. Really here, even though it's a small amount, you kind of use it. I just don't know about a setup. It'd be really, you have to kind of hook in and then maybe get in this tree. You have all these limbs in your way, you know? So maybe start, just get real low and just, but see if they come from that direction, they're gonna see you hanging there. How are you gonna get that close if they're bedded in this stuff? Also don't have any idea which way they'd be going. If it's both ways, it's kind of a hill beyond here, but it's way more open until you get to the hill. I bumped the deer here early season. I was coming along the back side, well, front side of the slough really. It busted out of there, blowing. I see, I don't know if this would ever count as like a funnel situation. This is all still really flat. It's a little, we just had the creek crossing here. I thought there was a fly, right? And it's really only about, I don't know, 30 yards across. And you get to a bigger, deeper slough. And this is just a big oak flat here. This is usually almost always full of acorns. I want to say there's a bunch of overcups along the slough and then water oaks. Again, I try not to focus on those. Never had any luck, but you know, they're comfortable crossing that slough and there's cover right there. But maybe they'd come out to feed. I think they would have a much harder time crossing this. This is pretty deep. I'm not gonna, I'd have to have hip boots if I wanted to cross it. So I don't know. Does that count as a funnel? They're not really funneling through here. It's more like this is just a hard edge that they're probably not gonna cross. Really not seeing any significant sign, rub lines, things like that. See, this may have been a scrape. Maybe. It's hard to tell. I don't know why there wouldn't be a branch though, so I'm not even gonna, probably not gonna mark that or anything. Now see, this seems like it should be significant, because this point juts out into the swamp, comes around, and then there's another cut over here. And I mean, it's not hunting season, but wind was coming this way over the point. Walked out on the point, it was coming this way. And I turned back in and I came and the wind started coming straight across the point. I'm not saying it's always doing that. Right now it's pretty still. I'm just saying this, I don't know how to make sense of it, but this seems like this should be an important feature that deer would gravitate to. And in fact, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dip down here, come around the other point, see what I can see. But see, I'm not seeing rub line, really obvious bed. I'm not seeing anything to really key in on. So I don't know, I might be importing, you know, Midwestern whitetail tactics to shit that doesn't work. But it seems different enough that it should be important, which makes me think I might be missing something. You see, obviously this is super trashy, so I'm gonna kind of go around then come out that other point. You see, even here, super trashy. You know, you'd be hard pressed to get, you know, an arrow more than 20 yards, really, depending on how you wanted to set up. I swear I just heard a snake. Yet again, here's the cut. Little kind of hump. There's another small cut that comes around like this, and that's where I just was. Again, one would think this would be significant, but I'm just not, either I'm blind or I'm just not seeing a sign that would make me want to do anything with this, except that it's thick and that there's some topographical change. You know, maybe this is not a bad little opening. If they want to come across and maybe come up, it's going to always be green. You know, but it looks like I would, if I were a deer, I would maybe try to even bed in some of these shady spots. Or I would at least think of moving through these. And if I'm standing in this, no bow hunter's gonna get me. I'm gonna walk out on this point and see. I mean, I have had the thought that, you know, there's an old logging road right there. And they probably do use that. But why wouldn't, you know, if I were a deer, I mean, bedding somewhere like on the side of this, if we get south winds and the wind's coming this direction, I'd bed, look back this way through the thick stuff, on the side of the hill. And nothing's going to be able to really get to you. See, when you're standing here, I mean, really, this is not really good deer habitat. This is kind of what I'm working with, but I mean, really, you can see the ground is just, there's not really a lot of browse. There's woody stems growing. It's just, it's thick because there's all these little tiny holly and water oaks and hickory growing that make it seem thicker than, it's not really thick in the way that you want deer habitat to be. So, I mean, yeah, you know, there is some browse. You know, they'll browse this, obviously. They browse some yew pond. But, you know, it's pretty poor habitat And this is up on the hill. You know, this is not down in the bottoms. But it's a nice day. I'm enjoying the nice day. See, when you're standing here, I mean, really, this is not really good deer habitat. This is kind of what I'm working with, but I mean, really, you can see the ground is just, there's not really a lot of browse. There's woody stems growing. It's just, it's thick because there's all these little tiny holly and water oaks and hickory growing to make it seem thicker than, it's not really thick in the way that you want deer habitat to be. So, I mean, yeah, you know, there is some browse. You know, they'll browse this, obviously. They browse some Yukon. But, you know, it's pretty poor habitat. And this is up on the hill. You know, this is not down in the bottoms. But, it's a nice day. I'm enjoying the nice day. You can see a little spot like this. So it gets tons of sunlight. It's very open. It's browsed down. Could access it coming through the bottoms, come up on the edge. This is pretty thick. Very thick. And probably not risking blowing out a bunch of deer if you access from the bottom and sneak up here. You can see a little, there's actually a really nice little trail there. See? A little trashy thing, and then this little trail. I actually like this. You'd be on the edge, and you would only be able to do it on a north wind. Some kind of north wind, so that your scent would be going that way, and they would, either that or you'd have to do it on a really, you'd have to do it on a cross or something, because if they came through or were working their way, I mean, they could come, this is from the east, so if they came this way, you know, they could smell you possibly. If it was some kind of southeasterly wind, if it's a northeast, maybe you'd be okay. This is the sort of area that I can key in on here. Are some defined trails, and it just seems a little more obvious to me. Let's see, my thought would be climb up this tree. I hate climbing pines, but climb up. You don't have to get super high. Get over this branch. You could probably get an arrow down in there. And this is not, this is pretty conservative. You know, you're not really diving in there. And there's pretty easy access. The bottom is right over there. And there's a logging road you could use as a cut right there. So it'd be pretty easy to sneak up the bottom. You would just have to make sure that, you know, if they were going to be coming this way, you would want some kind of, you know, wind like this, or maybe like this. If it's like this, if you're getting a nice north wind, yeah, your wind's going to be blown away, but they're probably not going to come with the wind of their tail. The other option might be this. I need to cut. You're not allowed to cut anything, but I'd get rid of some of these vines on this. Climb up to there. Have a nice low set. It's kind of a better opening if you're low. But that's assuming this is even really a good spot.